Right, then, everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's been a few days since the opening race of the 2023 F1 season at Bahrain. And perhaps we've had a few days just to reflect and give our thoughts on what was, let's be honest, about as dull an opener as I can remember. And I read somewhere on the stats that there's some stat that there's the fewest overtakes ever at a Bahrain Grand Prix. And it's not like it's been there for a few years now. It's been there for for quite a number of years. So gives you a rough idea really of how bad I guess the race was on Sunday. And a lot of people are already writing the season off. A lot of people saying Red Bull is going to fly. They're going to be miles in front. George Russell even went as far as saying he thinks that Red Bull could win every race between now and the end of the season, where anyone race in. And whilst Red Bull were extremely quick and clearly a long way in front of everyone else, there is still some hope. There should still be some optimism ahead. And this is why. The way in which a new structure has worked out. Now, I know firstly you're going to say these new rules, these new regulations, they're supposed to encourage close racing, but actually have done the opposite. And yes, that may be true. Certainly, Bahrain gave us that impression. However, as we said, there's a couple of things that haven't been mentioned that has to be noted. Firstly, the wind tunnel cap, or based on your performance from the previous season. So whilst there's a budget cap, and the budget caps are meant to allow, if every team is spending sort of a similar amount of money, then there shouldn't be too much difference in terms of the quality. That's the first theory in terms of the budget. But also, one of the things that they brought in as well is the amount of wind tunnel time a team gets. And that is simply based on where it finishes in the Constructors' Championship. So if you win the Constructors' Championship, as Red Bull did last year, they get less time in the wind tunnel than anyone else. And if you finish second and third and so on, and the further you finish back in the Constructors, the more wind time tunnel you get. So what that's supposed to do is that's supposed to generate an opportunity for the teams further back to have more development opportunity to catch up with those in front. Now, the reason why this could be interesting in terms of the car development this season is that if Red Bull aren't able to develop their car as much as other teams, perhaps over the course of the season, we should see that start to pay off. We should see Red Bull limited in the amount of upgrades it can do, simply because it doesn't have the wind tunnel time. And the Mercedes and Ferrari and so on will have a little bit more. Ferrari will have a bit more than Red Bull. Mercedes will have a bit more than Ferrari, and Alpine will have a bit more than Mercedes, and so on. So on that basis, there's still some reason for optimism that this won't be a total write-off season. It won't be just a total one-team dominant season. The other thing to consider as well with all this is the Aston Martins. The Aston Martins were well down the pecking order in the Constructors' Championship last year, and look where they are this season. Now, if they've got plenty of wind tunnel time coming up, and we know they're heavily backed in terms of its finances, they should be optimistic. They've got should have plenty of time in the wind tunnel ahead. But on that note, in terms of the wind tunnel, what we don't know, and it's something I would actually quite like to see, every month a team have to submit the amount of wind tunnel hours it's used, but unfortunately that's not yet the case. Whether we'll get to that point or not, probably not, but nevertheless, is that each team will budget budgeting your money, the amount of hours you get a wind tunnel over the course of the season. Some teams might have gone, we used the majority of it in the development of the car initially. Some teams might use half and think, okay, we've got half our wind tunnel hours to increase the quality of the car going forward with its upgrades and so on. So each team will have different. For example, we could be in a situation which, say, for argument's sake, Mercedes have used 30 hours of wind tunnel time, but McLaren have only used 20 hours of wind tunnel time, and therefore McLaren will have a lot more wind tunnel time going forward than Mercedes. As an example, I'm not saying, by the way, that is in any sense, but you see what I'm going with here. We don't know which each team has got in terms of its development plan. Each team will say, this is where we want to be after race 3. This is where we want to be after race 10. This is where we want to be when we get to this particular race, which is when we plan to introduce new parts and so on. There's a development plan. We don't know what that development plan is. What we do know is that each team has more or a set amount of wind time or wind tunnel time based on its results the previous year. So for that reason, it will be interesting to see, and it's just a thought, but it will be interesting to see. Perhaps Red Bull have anticipated such a move and gone, you know what, let's use 90% of a wind tunnel time, get the car off to a flyer, try and have a lead in the early races on the basis that they know perhaps other teams will catch them up later on in the season. Just a thought. Could be totally wrong and probably am, but it's just a thought. Anyway, I'd like to know what you think. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section. Don't forget, if you are new here, to like and subscribe to the page. And I'll see you all again on the next one.